For years, our media has used any excuse to trash Western societies as racist and cruel. The truth simply doesn't matter. Here, for instance, children are taught that racist white officials stole generations of Aboriginal children from loving homes, up to 100,000 of them. In fact, our courts have not found a single such case. Now, if you think that's impossible, then surely the media wouldn't tell such stories without hard evidence. Let me now tell you of an astonishing bit of fake news just now been exposed. We touched on this a little last year. It's gone boom now. Last year, the ABC reported shocking claims. The remains of 215 children had been found at the Kamloops Indian Residential School in Canada and were now being identified. Indigenous children allegedly dumped in unmarked graves at a Catholic school, stolen children that some activists claimed were murdered. Children that our taxpayer-funded conversation website claimed had died a political death and been disappeared. Well, in Canada, those claims proved explosive. Protesters burned down a number of churches, not just Catholic ones, and tore down statues of Queen Victoria and even of Queen Elizabeth, who some activists falsely claimed had visited the school and could be behind these horrible crimes. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, that woke flake, didn't question a word of this story. He said it actually showed a dark and shameful chapter in Canadian history, told the Catholic Church to step up and ordered national flags to be flown at half-mast. He even seemed to excuse the church burning.
It is unacceptable and wrong that acts of vandalism and arson are being seen across the country, including against Catholic churches. One of my reflections is I understand the anger that's out there against the federal government, against institutions like the Catholic Church. It is real and it is fully understandable.
The Vancouver Art Gallery, meanwhile, laid out 215 pairs of children's shoes as a memorial. Police, protesters, even school children wore and tied orange ribbons in honour of the supposed dead. And I say supposed because not a single one of those 215 bodies has actually been found. Not one! Sadly, there are some things that never seem to go out of fashion. Jew-hating, that's sure taking off again. Last week, 2 Jewish men in London were attacked by some teenager, totally unprovoked. And yesterday, far-left comedian Whoopi Goldberg, her head full of the new anti-white racism, made this insane claim about the Holocaust in which 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis.
This is white people doing it to white people.
Yeah.
So this is, y'all go fight amongst yourselves. Then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
It's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, because black, white, Jews, everybody eats each other.
The Holocaust is not about race. It's certainly not what the Nazis thought, forcing Jews and Jews only to wear yellow stars because they were supposedly of an inferior race, said the Nazis, before they sent the Jews off to concentration camps to wipe them out. Now, Brendan, I've mentioned already in the show the cancel culture. I have a shocking example at the end of the show too. It seems that Harry and Meghan, the runaway royals, are now the prince and princess of cancelling. They've joined in the pressure on the audio streaming site Spotify. Spotify hosts the hugely popular podcast of American Joe Rogan, who likes having on guests with whom he disagrees. And in one case, Rogan interviewed controversial vaccine expert Dr. Robert Malone, who's against the virus vaccine. A lot of people say it's discredited, but Rogan gave him a hearing. Now, in protest, singer Neil Young told Spotify to ban Rogan or he'd walk. Well, Spotify told Neil Young to take a hike. But now Harry and Meghan, who have a deal with Spotify, say they've been telling it for months that they're worried about COVID misinformation on its platform. They made a public announcement to this effect. What do you make of all that?
I'm shocked by this whole situation. You know, we have these hippies for censorship like Neil Young and more recently Joni Mitchell, who are basically calling on a massive corporation to ditch someone who they disagree with, to ditch Joe Rogan because they don't like him. That's, these old hippies from the 60s and 70s now agitating for corporate censorship. And of course, Harry and Meghan have to stick their beak in. There's never been a woke bandwagon they haven't tried to jump on, and now they're getting involved too. The Prince and Princess of cancellation, as you say, that's exactly what they're aspiring to be. They've always wanted to control how people think, and they now see an opportunity to do that through Spotify, even though they've never even made any podcasts for Spotify. They got paid a lot of money for doing not very much at all.
I was just thinking there's maybe a slightly apocalyptic tone to some of the things I've been saying tonight, and what I'm about to say as well. Might be because I spent the holidays reading some of the latest and fantastic books on the rise of China, including by Rush Doshi, who's now probably Joe Biden's top China advisor. Excellent book. Elizabeth Economy, brilliant book. Others as well. And I tell you what, we've got a challenge that most Australians don't even realise is in front of us, and that we're probably on the losing side. Which brings me to this question. I mean, what is happening with the leaders of the English-speaking West in contrast? Have you ever seen so many who are so weak? Now, in Australia, Scott Morrison, I do have some sympathy with him. I've been hard on him, sorry about that, but, he's on the ropes, let's be honest. In the United States, you've got President Joe Biden. He seems to have Alzheimer's. In Canada, on the weekend, you had Prime Minister Justin Trudeau fleeing and going into hiding when truckers staged a protest in Ottawa against vaccine mandates. He's a complete flake. And in Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been fighting for his political life because of his monstrous hypocrisy. I mean, ordering people in a lockdown to stay away from friends and family, even dying relatives, while he himself was holding secret parties with his staff, including a birthday party. Ever since Scott Morrison got asked, do you know the price of bread? Well, that's taken off on radio and social media. And now the Labor leader today has been asked if he knows the price of tampons.
For your female voters, can you give us the price of a box of Carefree?
No, I can't.
Joining me is Daisy Cousins, a big YouTube star with her own video channel.
I actually found that little facetious question quite amusing. I mean, I don't know the price of certain men's products. I wouldn't expect Anthony Albanese to know the price of women's products. But I'm actually quite glad the question was asked, because I think it raises quite a nice biting little point about how completely ridiculous asking a politician what the price of bread and milk is as a barometer of how, in touch they are with the general public. I mean, it is completely cringe, Andrew, to use the language of the internet. I mean, aside from anything else, nowadays compared to 10, 20 years ago, there are so many different brands of bread and milk, and there's A2 milk, and there's oat milk, and there's bran bread, and there's multigrain. There's all sorts of different brands. They all cost different prices. Depending on where you get them, they might cost something different still. It's impossible to find any kind of average, Andrew. And the other thing is, why on earth would Scott Morrison know what the price of bread is? He's the Prime Minister. He's too busy running the country. You can't possibly expect him to be running his own household as well. That's why he has Jenny. They're a wonderful team. It's called marriage. One person does one thing, another person does another thing. And the hysterical thing about it, Andrew, is that even the politicians who maybe do know what the price of bread is, you could argue they might have been briefed. I mean, there was a great tweet today by Craig Emerson, who was a former advisor to Bob Hawke, who claimed sort of quite smugly that, whenever Bob Hawke got the bread and milk questions, he'd always brief him on what they are. And, he said it's not new and it's not hard. Look, I think he intended that to be a kind of anti-Liberal Party, anti-Scott Morrison gotcha. It certainly wasn't, because all it proved was that all the politicians are apparently as out of touch as each other because they don't know what the price of a loaf of bread is. I think